What's up? What's up? Welcome everyone. This is another Truth Talks. Truth Talks is it's, it's something like a podcast, but it's really like a conversation that we have within the community, and that is with Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Kalamazoo (TRHT). And I have to shout out retired Captain Stacy Ledbetter, who's the co-creator with myself for Truth Talks, and also shouts out to Shalana Lewis for offering so much support and providing a platform for us to be able to have real conversations with community members about real topics, not just hot topics, but actually real topics that propels and moves our community. So got to give a shout out to Emily Oliveras behind the scenes on tech. And with no further ado, before introducing our amazing panelists for today, I want to go through the touchstones. And the touchstones are just a verbal agreement that we have that we use within TRHT Kalamazoo as a way of having a respectful conversation that moves. And the touchstones are as follow: be 100% present, extending and presuming welcome. Speak your truth. Identify assumptions and suspend judgment. Respect and learn from silence. Maintain confidentiality. No language of the soul is privilege over any other language of the soul. Value feeling as much as knowing. No fixing, no saving, no advising. Trust the healing process, your own heart and the hearts of others. Listen deeply. When things get difficult, turn to wonder, and always by invitation. With that, again, we would just like to get ready to go into it. I don't think I said who I was. I am your host. My name is Ed Genesis. I am a racial healing practitioner, co-director with Speak It Forward, which means I mentor, talk to the youth in the community, also in different centers, especially things are opening back up. And I'm also a father. And today we are talking about parenting. So I would like to introduce the panelists. If we can start with you, Stacy, if you can introduce yourself, and then we can just popcorn it over to Derek.
Hey everyone, I'm Stacy Sharon Milnickel, she, hers. I work at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, so I have a lot of love for TRHT and everything they do. My wife and I are mothers to a 5-year-old and an almost very sassy and determined 3-year-old. We have both been working at home through this whole pandemic, so that has definitely changed a lot. There's a lot of together time in our house. And we've had to navigate that, and there's been a lot of challenges. We have also had to have some conversations with our kids during these dual pandemics that we've got, and we've had to have a lot of hard conversations. And so I'm happy to be here today and lean into this space.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Derek, if you can introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Derek Miller. I'm a care coordinator with the Fort Ed Fatherhood Program and fatherhood mentor with the Fatherhood Network. I have 2 boys, a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old who just decided to start walking yesterday. So that's awesome. The baby gates are up. I mean, obviously outside of my job and everything, I love father. I love being a father. I love pouring into my kids as well as looking out for the kids inside the community. So, I'm really thankful to be a part of this conversation today.
Thank you very much. And I would be remiss if I didn't lift up the other panelists. Miss Hebony Bostic, she is a single mother, and she also does cleaning. She has her own cleaning service and her own lawn service. And she goes hard. So today she didn't have anything scheduled, but she got called in to do something. So she's having technical difficulties right now. Hopefully that works out so we can dive in. But in interim, we will start. What is your parenting style? And we wanted to ask this question on the agenda because different people have different parenting styles. Myself, just to set the tone, so to speak, I grew up in a household, single mother. It was 4 of us, and we got whoopings with the belt. And then I also got some other things because I was her oldest boy. And she felt like a lot of people in that generation that thought hitting was okay. I also got hit in school. So let me say that we got swats in school from you start with the ruler on your hand in kindergarten, then it moved up to bend over and get hit with the board. So corporal punishment was just a thing where I grew up, which is born and raised in Gary, Indiana. It was just the way of the land. Switches, belts. I didn't get the extension cord, but I knew people who did. And then, like I said, when I got older, I got whatever was pretty much around. So I wanted a different style of parenting. I believe I was a talker growing up, and I could reason with my mother, which she thought sometimes was getting smart. I like to hear from my children I have 3, 2 boys and a daughter. My daughter being the most opinionated and the most, my even change, for real. So with that, I just learned to engage more, hearing more what they have to say, and not shutting down and saying, well, I'm the parent and you're the child, and this is just the way it is. So that's kind of my approach, not the be your child's parent and not their friend. I know the line between that. So, but I also believe that we can have healthy relationships so we can talk. And so that's what I wanted to have as far as my parenting style. So yeah, just wanted to hear, what do you feel your parenting style? What is your parenting style, Stacey?
You know, I knew that this question was coming, so I actually looked up what are these parenting styles, and I saw myself in a lot of it. The old model, there's authoritative, authoritarian, not present. It had a different word, and I was like, I looked up the new ones. There's this helicopter parent. Now there's a lawnmower parent. And I'm like, I don't know what all these are. Like, what do I do? What are my own actions? I don't necessarily give titles to my parenting style. I will say that I'm very involved. And I think one of the things that I focus the most on is my kids' emotional well-being. I am very emotionally present. My wife is emotionally present. We do not dismiss feelings just because these tiny humans are little, their feelings matter to us. When they were, the whole cry out when they were a baby, that wasn't our deal. We didn't do that. Those little babies needed something. They needed love. And depending on who you talk to, you hear that you're going to spoil that baby, put that baby down. You hear all that in the periphery. But I know in my heart that being emotionally available and trying to listen is key. It makes me feel good, and trying to work that out so that they can be emotionally available when they're older. My son, I want him to be emotionally available for his family and the women in his life. Toxic masculinity is something that I'm not super comfortable with. And I don't want that for him. I want him to be able to cry and not feel bad about it. And I want my daughter to be able to express her feelings. And if somebody says, well, you're being too bossy or too dramatic, I want her to own that and be able to come back and say, no, this is how I'm feeling and this is valid. We have so many ways of being that aren't necessarily healthy in our society, but they've just kind of become the norm. And I want my kids to beat that. And I just want them to be able to be present. So yeah, being emotionally available, being present in the moment, which has been really hard in the pandemic because there's so much togetherness, as I mentioned. I got to space out. Sometimes like I can't be there. We've got two parents working from home, and two little kids who have tons of needs just because that's their age. So there's just a lot of needs this past now year and a half. So being able to take care of myself so I can be present for them sometimes looks like, screen time, and turning to that and being okay with it. And I think when you start your parenthood journey, you have all these list of things you're not going to do. And sometimes you just have to say, oh, what were you thinking? That's not happening. It's okay if you're done, or you need to get something done to get those kids, just have that chill time. Yeah. So those are the first couple of things that come to mind for me.
I appreciate you sharing that. And especially like the being emotionally available. One of the things that my mother and I talk about now, that I'm grown, is that lack of that. She thought, I grew up in Gary. It was tough. In order to make me tough, there was a cutoff point. And there was, I probably should have been a mama's boy, what they call it. I adore her, and I would have been up under her. But society said that this was not okay. And I would hear the different people say, well, Terry, her name is Teresa. They would call her Terry. And they would say, Terry, that's a little boy. You can't let him be up under you like that. You gotta. And I remember when it started changing, and she would literally push and say, no, you can't do that. And it did play a part in what I learned later on was toxic masculinity. I had never heard of that before, but when I heard it being defined, we actually had a Truth Talks on this, because I just remember repeating and emulating and acting out some of the things that I was shown and taught. And I was definitely shown that little boys don't need the same amount of affection and hugs and things like that. And that's totally not true. Absolutely untrue. And I can't quit hugging all of my children. And now I have a grandson, and it's all over again. So Derek, I want to go to you and ask you your parenting style. And thank you again, Stacey, for lifting up that being emotionally available. I have to say, in the world that we live in, which has been the same kind of cold world since I've been around, what's wrong with spoiling your children? Like, what's wrong with that? Because, like, if we don't do it, that's it. Derek, how do you feel? What's your parenting?
Well, I'll say that I grew up pretty similar to you, Ed. My dad and his side of the family, heavy military presence. So I have 3 brothers. And when something went down in the house, he would have all of us line up. He would say, okay, you got 1 minute to tell me what happened. And, so we would have that 1 minute, and he would leave the room. So we're talking amongst each other, and just like, man, I don't even know what happened. I wasn't there. And if nobody spoke up, we all got it. So that would, whether it be hand to belt, we all got it. And it got to a point where we just got tired and just like, look, I took it last week, just pass it on down the line. So everyone would just kind of take their turns going through that. That's not the approach that I take. I definitely believe in more in talking with my sons. I believe more in giving them the tools to really be what I know that they can be, or for them to really show me who they are. So with my sons, I do take that talking approach. When my son is upset, try to get on his level and say, yeah, that was disappointing, wasn't it? I know it was, but now that we've learned this lesson, we need to do this, this, and this. So I like to kind of show what to do and kind of run through that with my son. I do a lot of the what did I say with my son. So I end up repeating myself a lot, but it's like, okay, son, I know you heard me. I see you doing this, but what did I say to do? So it's a lot of redirecting. I don't really know what category that would fit in, but very involved, a lot of communication. That's where I am.
You know what? I appreciate both of you all's honesty as far as what category is. I too, Stacey. I was like, well, I wonder where do I fit? And I don't know where I fit. And it seems like they make up something every week to just like, well, these group of parents do this. So I'm like, I don't know. I just tried the best that I can. And I also want to say, I want to double back. One of the things that I had to own and learn is my mother didn't have a manual. So it's not that I'm grown and afforded different technical opportunities, educational opportunities, just a and then come back and judge her what she did or didn't do. That's not my not that egotistical as to think that, hey, I got it figured out. You should have did this, this, this. However, I am for real enough to say, I realized that you copied a lot of things or repeated some of the things that you necessarily and you didn't know those things. So I really appreciate, Derek, that you lifted up giving the tools because, excuse me, I found myself repeating some of the same things, like, oh, and then other people asking, like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, I thought this was how it's done. I thought that everybody did it this way. And it's like and what I'm speaking of specifically is like anger. That was so I want to tell a small story before going into this next part's communication, because this is the segue for communication. My mother and I can talk about everything growing up, but there were certain things that were off limits. I found out. I thought she was an open book. I came to her and told her everything, how my was, my classmate's name, my teacher's name, what I ate for lunch, like just was open. And then there were certain things that would come up and I could tell the way she would answer that felt like, So 4th grade, and my wife and I just talked about this actually. There's a movie or TV series where they depicted something like this. And this is another generational type of thing. I think it still goes on, but it definitely went on in my generation. And what I'm speaking of is the child that runs home. Like, I ran home. 4th grade, one guy held me, another guy hit me. I could not believe it. And I don't say I deserve it, but I was kind of picking to start a fight with 2 people. I ran home, my safe haven. My mother asked me why was I crying. I told her what happened. She said, get in the car. Myself, her, my older sister. I don't have any older brothers, any other male cousins. And during this time, that was the way I was raised. Like, well, girls are, I say this all the time during talks because it kind of scarred me a little bit and shaped my reasoning. And so it was little girls are sugar spice, everything nice. Boys are frog, snails, puppy dog tails. So I thought I was inherently dirty and something bad about my sister didn't have. And so fast forward, we pull up. I say, Mama, there they are. It's a group of little, younger guys my age. Well, your size. I said, Mom, it was two of them. And now it's other guys with them. And she said, well, I don't know what to tell you. You got to get out. Because if you run today, you'll run tomorrow, and so on and so forth. I get what she meant in hindsight. But the fear in my heart and the rejection, so like, are you kidding me? Like, the only person that I can go to? So her communication style stopped then, and mine stopped. We had a wedge from that day forward. I didn't know what else I can feel safe telling her that she would actually bag me up on or support me. And then I could also feel her feeling like she didn't know what to tell me as being a young Black boy growing up in the inner city. I can see the fear in her eyes and almost like panic. I try to be a little different, but in full transparency, I told Emily that I had to say this. That's my story that got passed on. So my daughter, same, she told me with certain things, and it was like, how do you want me to handle this? So I have to call every woman that I know to stop it off, because shame, and shame is defined as the fear of feeling isolated from others. I don't know how to experience this as a man, feeling like I can hold you, feed you, hug you, tell you I love you, but if you tell me something, be menstrual cycle to, I think I have a crush on a little boy. All of these things I really had to grow and lean on my wife, my mother, and the people to work on my communication style and my skill to not shut her down just because she was a young lady and I was unfamiliar, because that's absolutely what I was doing. But because she has such a big voice, and she will call me out flat out. So I just wanted to share that before going into the communication styles of what I witnessed growing up, and then what I ultimately almost repeated. That's just my truth. Stacey, how do you feel about communication styles? I know you touched on a little bit earlier, which was dope. The children get to express themselves. But what does that look like?
Everything we're doing now is in hopes that when these kids are older, they can come to us as a consultant, right? And they can come with us for anything. And it's hard at times, Ed, to not be reactionary. Emmett at 5, he even surprises me with some of the stuff he says. And you want to be like, what, where did you hear that? And you're like, okay, let's do this. Let's have that conversation. We talk about things that make our parents cringe a little. We are very open about anatomy and calling all of the parts of the body the right way. We know that there are no bad words when it comes to anatomy. We talk about the LGBTQ community. Sarah and I are married, and they need to know right now what that means. And queer, not a bad word, right? Like, we lean into all this stuff. What I'm trying to kind of keep in mind when these things come up, and when we have to have the conversation or one of them brings it up, is that we don't want to do that whole, you'll learn about that when you're older. I think there's always some age appropriate conversation that you can have with the kid. You don't need to give them X, Y, and Z, but you can give them ABC. You can give them kind of that low level, so they've got some knowledge, so they're not so shocked by it later, or learning about something in a way that it didn't come from you, right? They're learning from friends, or they're learning from the internet. Like, I want them to know about this important stuff: racism, gender, anatomy, all this stuff. This is my job. This is Sarah and I, we have to do this. And so we have to lean into these conversations. And so we are all about conversation. And like I said, some older folks in our family, and they're probably like, oh gosh, you're talking about that. Like, yeah, we are. It's okay. It's okay to start these conversations young. In the hopes that when they're 16, 17, 20, that they're still going to come to us. And we're not going to have that big reaction that they're trying to avoid. So they're figuring this stuff out on their own. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, and that's very important. Especially, I have to say, we have predators in the world, that not just sexual predators, but predators, period, that prey on ignorance, that prey on especially the youth that don't know. And these are a lot of times who predators target. And by predators, I mean anybody that literally looks at somebody as if, I think I can get over on this so said person because I don't think they know. Nobody told them. And that could be to set them up for ridicule. Because I remember being that guy, like, ask him, does he know about this? And then everybody, all the guys your age kind of like waiting on your answer, and then everybody laughs. Or it could be a lot more dangerous. And I say a lot more dangerous because ridicule, bullying somebody for something that they don't know, it can be dangerous because it turns into people lying about just to fit in, about things that they know, and repeating ignorant information for years to come, and then carrying that into relationships and thinking that this is how you have a healthy relationship. And then next thing you know, you have a lot more trauma and a lot more ripples and a lot more children saying, my mother did this, or my father did this, or this is what I saw parents do or my guardians do in my household because they didn't heal from whatever trauma, from being preyed upon a lot of times. So Derek, what is your communication style and what does that look like?
Yeah. I'll say that my communication style follows some kind of the same path as Stacy. And honestly, if I had to give it a name, I believe in what I call the law of first. Every piece of information that you learn gets compared to the first piece of information you learned in that subject. So with that being said, I see it, especially as a parent and father, that it's my responsibility to tell my sons the truth. Tell them about, like Stacy said, anatomy. We say exactly what it is. Tell them the truth. Break it down and to a point that you can understand. Any subject that comes up, my wife and I, we try to talk to him about it on a way that he can understand. Like in middle of pandemic, George Floyd, a lot of protests and everything's going on. And, we could see my son taking in this information. And he's asking, well, Dad, what does Black Lives Matter mean? What does this mean? So we had to start talking about race, start talking about his skin, how some people see it, and how there's nothing wrong with his skin, and how there are plenty of people out here that accept him. What to do when someone is trying to devalue him because of skin color and things like that, how to handle that, who to talk to. Like we have to bring that information and be open and transparent about it. So my communication style is always open. I want my sons to be able to come to me and talk about whatever comes to their mind. And I mean, that requires a ton of self-examination and making sure that I'm really giving them the best truth that I can without me clouding it with a bunch of my just what I see. So I try to give them the best truth that I can and the most honest way that I can. So, like I said before, I believe in giving them the tools that they can use to make the best decision possible.
Thank you for sharing that, and especially for lifting up the fact that when they see things that's going on around them, you actually take the time to talk to them about that as well. As parents, sometimes because we're the bigger people, you're the little person, so it's like is exactly what Stacy lifted up earlier. It's like, why are you even watching the news? Turn channels, cut on cartoons, like something more age appropriate. And it's like, well, I saw it and I have a question about this. So thank you both for lifting up that even at 5, having that conversation, even if you have to meet them where they're at. Sometimes it's not about being extra adult with it, but it is respecting the fact that they have questions whenever they have questions. Welcome, Ebony. We are talking about communication styles right now. So if you can introduce yourself and go right into, like, what is your communication style as a parent?
Hi everybody, my name is Ebony. I think that my communication style, as when we're dealing with teens or young adults or adults, which one?
Dealing with your children as a parent.
Dealing with my children as a parent, I think that I give them freedom of speech. I let them, you know, like get their voice, like be vocal in my house, and you know, be able to share how they feel and when they feeling it. If you sad, be able to tell me that you sad. I want to know why you sad. You know, we can talk about it, because if I feel like if I fail to put them to the side and talk about whether they happy, whether they sad, whether they're upset, then the problem is going to escalate outside of my house, and I got to stop it once, you know, from home. So how I deal with it, I just do more talking to them. Talk to them. That's all I can do.
Yeah, that's great though, because like what we were just talking about, a lot of times when parents feel embarrassed or frustrated or don't have the answers, it's easy to just say, just go in the other room, or just go play, or just you know, I've seen it all, different played out in different ways. And one of the things that I want to lift up as far as communication, I have to say this is very important in my life. Excuse me. My father was murdered when I was 2 years old by off-duty police officers with non-registered police guns in Gary, Indiana. I did not know this growing up. Anytime I asked about my father, no matter what age, I was always told he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I knew the police played a part, but that was it. I was in the 11th grade in my science class, Miss Crosby, and my history teacher was in the back grading papers. And he was the first person to tell me that my father was murdered and how. This was the first time I'd ever heard it, period. And I cannot articulate the emotions that I had on the inside that I had to keep in, to not bust out in front of everybody at school, to keep them in until I got home. And I about collapsed when I got in the door. And out of her fear, I still didn't find out the rest of the story until like 10 years later. And that's because they did a full investigation and a magazine wrote things about it. And because of a lot of lack of communication style, I'm over talkative or whatever. I over communicate sometimes. And people have said, well, you're not supposed to say that to your kids. And I'm not saying talking at them and saying something. I'm saying like explaining something or breaking it down. And I've been told by other parents, like, why would you try to explain that to a child? And it's like, well, why not? They're people. Like, we say child, we say adult. But if we didn't have so many labels in society, I think we would just say people, or human beings. And no matter how big, small, or whatever, it's all the same. Pain is pain, laughter is laughter, joy is joy. I kind of want to stay on communication for a minute before going to that other topic, because I have saw the effects. So I don't want to tell anybody else truth that's not here. And so I won't say names or anything like that. But what I will say is that I know of a person that was raised by someone else, by that was not his mother, and was told for years that this was his mother, and it was like a family secret. And then finally at like 16, 17, ta-da, we've been keeping something from you. The person that you've been seeing that you think is your aunt, she's really your mother. And this was devastating to this person. And I watched a lot of trauma come up. I watched a lot of codependency. Right now, currently talking to therapists and things like that. And as I think about, again, going to that generation where, like Stacy mentioned, everything was like, whoa, you don't say that, or what are you, I was a grown man still thinking that, no, don't let anybody touch your belly button. My wife laughed at me because I was like, well, if you touch my belly button, I'm serious. This is a true story. I was like, you can kill me playing with my belly button. This is what my mama told me. And I believe that. Like, and I've been through science. I graduated, all that. I even got a little college under my belt. But there's certain things that I held on to because mama said. What mama said and what mama don't say, or what parents say, what parents don't say, that can set off something that's something real. So I just wanted to stay on this for a minute, because the parent that says, if a bully hits you, you pick up the biggest thing that you can find and you hit them back. I was taught that, and I know a lot of other people were. The problem with that is the turnoff. You don't know when you're being bullied or not. And so anytime you feel like somebody is invading your space or making you feel small, then your reaction is to make them feel back small. And sometimes it's not physical. Sometimes it's just like just really crushing. And I believe that's the wrong messaging, but I also believe that it's wrong to say accept it and it'll just stop. Because I've seen it not just stop, or they're just playing around. They're just children. Don't tell the teacher. Other parents encourage other parents to not report it, or they're just being kids. They just were playing. And it's like, well, this guy has stitches, and they were not just playing. And we need to start asking those questions of, where is this anger coming from? Because if the parent says that this is okay, and the child may never know how to express that, my mother said that it's okay if somebody does this to me to do this. They just inherit it as a part of their life and say, if anybody bothers me, this is what I do. And I know I just went lengthy, so y'all forgive me, but this is a very important topic to me when it comes to some of the things that we see the smallest children repeat as far as racism, their homelessness, You name it. You name the topic. If you ask a child right now, unless they don't know about it, they have an opinion. And a lot of times their opinions are shaped from something that they heard from somebody that they look up to and say that this has to be the ultimate truth. So I wanted to just dive into, I appreciate you all lifting up the communication styles, but I want to twist the communication styles and ask, when something like, I'll bring up what should have been innocent is cartoons. They have disclaimers on a lot of the cartoons now. If your child runs across one of these cartoons that can be misogynistic, that could be racist, that could be just highly suggestive in a lot of different ways, what is the communication style about something like that, especially when a child is saying, this is for me, so I couldn't be doing anything wrong as I'm watching a cartoon. So yes, I may have repeated something that's in a cartoon, but are you kidding me? How am I in trouble for that? Like, what is that communication style looks like? Is the child in trouble? Do you guilt yourself and go into, maybe I didn't say enough? And I need y'all to be real on that one, because that's something I had to be totally real about and was like, wow, you know what? I missed that one. In my household, it was the gay conversation and my boys and them coming and asking me questions. And I'm like, wow, okay, I missed that one. Let me sit down and talk to y'all and tell y'all some real experiences that I have of why you cannot be homophobic in this world. And not only that, but let's talk about love a little bit more. The more you talk about love, you don't see the differences in people like that. And to compare you against one another as if you're somebody and everybody you meet is nobody unless they equal up to who you are. Let's get that out. And let's talk about how we look for love when a person is like, how do you receive it? How do you give it? So that's just where I'm at with that. That was a real topic that we had to have. There was a show, Empire, that was popular. There was a lot of Black people saying they have a gay agenda. They have this. They're teaching your kids this. I had to sit down with my boys and say that this is no, don't buy into what they are saying. Let me talk to you about this. So that's just me. Stacey, I see you shaking your head. I got to go to you first, if you don't mind. What does that look like when the world is sending out toxic messaging? The communication style.
I've still got littles, right? Like my youngest is just about ready to hit kindergarten. So mine's a little different. And some of this, I start thinking out there, I'm like, oh gosh, this is going to get heavy quick. One of the things like I notice now where we're looking at a book, we're watching a show. I have to say, hey, Emmett, why do you think all these people are white? Like, if you're looking at some older books, like I'm trying to prompt him to think about that. He'll see a show where he's watching this family kind of movie right now, and it's a little maybe over the age, like he's maybe a little too young for it, but a man slaps a child. And we have to talk about that. That man made a bad choice. That shows you that he is not a good person. That shows you that that's somebody to stay away from. And that's something that you talk to an adult about, those kinds of things. I lean into books a lot. I'm active at our local library, and I like to request books that show like all bodies are good bodies, because we're already starting to talk about, I'm prepping him not to be the bully. As somebody who was bullied, it's my worst fear that one of my kids is going to be a bully. So I'm slowly working on different genres of, reasons that people could be bullied: skin, body size, disability, LGBTQ, gender. So we read a lot of books about that, because I don't pretend to be an expert in all of this. I do my part, but there are people who have put a lot of time and effort into those topics, and reading an age appropriate book to those kids, my littles, is a really good way to start those conversations. Emmett will tell you right now, oh, he'll be like, some people are short. He just saw his first like little person. And I was like, yeah, but all bodies are good bodies. I'm training him for that. All skin is good skin, and I knew he would notice, and he notices now. We were sitting in a restaurant last night and he said, Mama, that person has brown skin. I was like, yeah, isn't that pretty? Like, and so for me as a white parent, it's a different story for me. I have a huge job for him to be anti-racist, and he knows what anti-racist is as far as a 5-year-old can be. But I'm just doing this all for him to have the script flipped the right way. And for him, when he notices those differences, to know that that's how it is. That's the world. We are all different. And so, yeah, it's a big job. There's a lot of weight on my shoulders about it. But I feel good about it, and we just keep talking.
Yeah, talking is key. I love the fact that nothing is off limits, because that's pretty much where I was going, because the world will throw so much at us. I learned from a rap song about Aunt Jemima Sir. That's how I found out something was wrong with it. And I was in high school, and Big Daddy Kane said it in a lyric about her having a perm. And I was like, well, what was her? She got a perm. And they changed the bottle. And I remember I came home and I told my mother, I said, so it's a rap song where this guy said things are the same even though she has a perm. And I said, I don't get it. And she was like, well, the scarf. And she had to explain I grew up in a predominantly Black city. I didn't experience racism in my face. So I had to have things explained to me, like what this really represented and what it meant. And it was like, wow. And again, one of those crushing moments of like what is that about? So you start getting into those questions. But again, my mother being one of the ones that when I got too deep, it was like, that's just how the world is. I don't know what to tell you. That was not cool to think, like this is just how the world is, because it makes you feel unsafe again. Ebony, when things that come up in the world, like Derek lifted up George Floyd, or Stacey lifted up bullying. I touched on bullying a little bit. How do you have those communication styles when the world is telling your children something that you're not?
How I deal with stuff like that when they send my kids the wrong message, I explain to my kids like who they are. I'm real big on confidence. Like telling my kids that they handsome, telling them every day that they pretty, tell them which way to go. Like, so I'm pretty sure I saw it in them so far what's good and what's bad. And about the bullying, it's like with my kids, I tell them to treat people exactly how they want to be treated. So if you're watching TV and they're cussing, you're not supposed to be cussing. So it's just like a discernment issue. Like when I send my kids off to school, it's gonna be kids that's in there. They're gonna be cussing. They're gonna be saying inappropriate things. They're gonna be doing inappropriate things. So it's best to take what you learn from home wherever you go. So if I see something that's inappropriate for one of my kids that's watching like a show, and they like in the movies all the time, when I take my kids to the movies, it might be an appropriate movie, but they might have a sex scene in it. So it's not right now, it's not appropriate for them to watch it, but I already explained to them what we might see. So I say, hey, if you see something inappropriate, turn your head, close your eyes for like 10 seconds, open them back up, like SpongeBob. He does inappropriate things all the time. He split his, like my daughter be like, Mom, SpongeBob being gay. He's splitting his pants and showing his butt, so y'all know not to split your pants and show your butt or touch anybody else's butt. I explained some private parts are private. You don't touch other people's privates. You don't let nobody touch your private. So at school, they're gonna, this is not gonna be hidden from my kids, and the world is not gonna hide it. It's gonna be people touching people inappropriate. There's gonna be people doing inappropriate things. So at home, as parents, we have to extol these things in our kids so that they act accordingly when they leave, because we can't. We can only do so much. And we can only filter so much because the whole world is exposing our kids to, in the music that they listen to, and the music, the commercials. They have like men on men commercials where men are kissing. It's I'm not gonna love my kids any different if that's the route they choose. So, like you said before, you said about love. I teach them the importance to love people for who they are and love yourself first. Because self-love is the best love. And if you experience self-love, then you don't have to hurt others. Hurt people hurt people. That's what I explain to my kids. If you're hurting inside, let's talk about it. Every situation that you go through in life is going to be, all the hurt comes from people holding things in over the years. Holding things in when you're upset. If you were upset from yesterday, we should have discussed this yesterday. So I kind of try to tackle things as they come up. Even far as disciplining, you said earlier, what do you do if something arose in the house as far as communication with their kids? Well, if a person is too upset, even with adult, even with a kid, if a kid is too upset or you're too upset, sometimes you have to just walk away for a few minutes and let the other person calm down, because it could lead into an escalating situation. So if I'm dealing with a kid at home that's acting out or being more vocal than I am, because we all tell them they can be vocal and they can express themselves. But when you're upset and you're expressing yourself and you're yelling, well, if you're yelling at me, sometimes I can't understand that when someone is yelling. So if you take it down a notch, you say, hey, you're being too loud. I understand what you're saying, but let's talk about this in a lower tone, okay? Why are you upset? What happened? Explain to me what happened. If you're happy, hey, you're looking a little happy today. What's going on with you? You okay? You're looking good. It just goes back to just reassuring them. Like reassuring them if they're upset. They need to know that they're upset, because sometimes when people are upset and they sitting there with their face all tore up, they don't even know they're upset. It could be the sun. Well, just move over a little bit. You can fix it. That's all.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that. And I want to lift up, and that's because I know you, I'm getting to know you a lot more. And so I know your background and a lot of things. So I just want to touch on, when you lifted up the two men kissing in a commercial, is not that you were condemning anyone, but the conversation that you and I had was the lack of Black men role models for young Black men, and that they're choosing from a lot of times TV and things like that, was one of the conversations that we had, and you navigating through that. Not that you were condemning what you saw or what the children saw, but that as a single mother, how do you navigate with that, with the things? I just wanted to make sure that, not speaking for you, but I know some of the conversations and the struggles that you have lifted up, which is why I asked you to be a part of this conversation. But just because I've been more, I've been in a lot more rooms where I know to be a little more careful with how I word things. I just wanted to make sure I supported you in what you were trying to say with that, not speaking for you, but just lifting up what we had in a prior conversation.
Yeah, if they see something like that, it's not necessarily, to me, it's not like, oh my goodness, it's two men kissing, and they shouldn't respond to that either. It's like, it's just two people. Like, they're two people that's, like you said about love and stuff like that. I don't teach my kid, like, if we sitting there and they see a commercial with two people, I me personally, I didn't it's not, I cannot disapprove or approve of something like that. It's just accepting people for who they are. And kids, like, kids gonna see that. And like I said, you know, you got to be strong within who you are. You know, I said, you know, if they see something like that, you like girls or you like boys? Kids, I'm telling you, these kids' comprehension level is way stronger than it was when I was a kid. So their understanding, their understanding of being two people of the same sex liking on each other is not something that's far fetched nowadays. We see it all the time, and kids are starting to see it. So when you, as a child, when you see something like that, that's why early on when I teach my kids about dating and about the bees and you know, whatever, I explain to them like, hey, you know, it's okay for if you see someone of the same sex or the same, you know, gender, like it, that's what they're into. You have to accept and love what you're into and be okay that people are different from you. Just like bullying. Just because you see two people out in public, you don't say, oh, it's two people out in public and embarrassing them and shaming them for who they are. You just learn to accept it. Nothing big because you wouldn't wow it if it was a man and a woman. So.
And some people do, though, unfortunately. But I want to touch on that real fast, because when you said like it not being as far-fetched anymore, that was one of the things that I had to talk to my boys about. And they made homosexuality so taboo once upon a time. You have to remember, they considered this a mental health condition once upon a time. And then they told that to the rest of society. And with that, because I'm going to just go deep real quick. With that.
And then they legalized gay marriages after they did it.
Well, yeah, years later, it took a lot of fighting. It took a lot of, you know, a lot of people. But you got to remember, society catches up with things later on. So even though they passed once upon a time civil rights and said, okay, black people are allowed in the restaurants now. Restaurant owner said, I can care less about that policy. You come in here, you want to. And then there's still places right now in 2021, even though civil rights have been thriving, that I still don't feel comfortable going as a black man. Just mentoring this morning, I had to share with the youth of being triggered and having to remind myself that I have the right to go wherever it is I want to go, as long as I adhere to those laws and those policies. And I shouldn't have to fear for my safety. And I'm very glad that Ebony was very candid about that, because that was one of the conversations that we had before, where she was like, you know, I struggle with what society says. And I know a lot of what she repeats is from the book of Toxic Masculinity, that says, can you mute, Ebony, or Emily, can you mute? But it comes from a book that says men have to act a certain type of way. You have to be like this. And as a single mother, because I remember going through it, you're scared of your son being vulnerable. And society says, unfortunately, this was real and this was taught. Gay equaled soft for some reason. It meant, and I'm speaking of men. When they say if a man is a homosexual, then he has, let me lift up, I use Bath and Body Works religiously. I have So Pretty tattooed on my neck, and I feel like I am. And a whole bunch of other things that I was told I could not do growing up. I twisted around and said, well, why can't I? And I embrace being me. With that, I also know that I made a lot of people upset. I even lost some so-called friends along the way that were like, why would you wear this? Why would you say that? And it's like, wow, I just felt comfortable with just being me. And if that's quote unquote having a feminine side or whatever you deem me as being, show me the book of what being a man is. And I have yet to read that book. I have yet to run across somebody that said they have this book. but I've learned to have compassion for the mothers that say they will eat my son alive if I don't make him the hardest that I have to. And it's like that hurts. It really hurts because I remember being that little boy being pushed off and saying, you know what, you got to figure it out, but you can't run to me because I'm your mother. And it's like, well, who do I run to then? Derek, I know that was a little lengthy, but that was very needed. And I hope any of the listeners got something from that. Actually, if I could pause you for 1 minute, Stacy, by no means is this to tokenize or exploit, but if you can speak on anything that you just heard and educate us further.
Yeah, no, I'm here for it. Yeah,
I would
I'm
appreciate it.
totally here for it. We are a 2-mom household, and my youngest is going to kindergarten, as I said, and I am working on bringing up some family inclusive language for our future teacher. I have several friends who have littles, y'all, like preschool, young fives, kindergarten, elementary school, who their kids have transitioned. They are non-binary, transgender. This topic needs more attention from parents, caregivers, whoever the adults are in their lives, whether it's grandparents, I don't care. We've got to get these kids comfortable with talking about gender. If somebody used to be a boy or used to be a girl, and now they're dressing as, what they didn't dress like, we've got to talk about it, right? Because those kids are some of the most vulnerable kids in school to bullying. And when we talk about families, it's not just LGBTQ families that need this kind of love and inclusive language. We've got kids with parents in jail. So when it comes to this whole Father's Day or dads with donuts kind of events, it hurts those kids. We've got kids in foster care. We've got kids with deceased parents, LGBTQ families. So when it's the muffins with moms, when it's the father-daughter dance, could those be more inclusive? Could those be family dances? Forms, when these kids are going to school, it says mother and father quite typically. Well, that doesn't fit a lot of families. It never has. But I think today it's even more important. Is there an option if you have to put your child's gender down on a form? Is it just male or female? How do we as parents talk to our kids about gender and LGBTQ families, whether these kids themselves are in the LGBTQ community or whether their family is? I think this is just, obviously, I'm very passionate about it. But I think schools and teachers, we all need to do our part so that these kids have success in schools, so that my family, when my kids go to school and a teacher's reading a book about a family, they're not just seeing a mom and a dad. I want to see all types of families represented. I don't want to just see white faces represented in these books. So I have high expectations for these conversations that parents are having with their kids, and that transferring into the schools as well.
I appreciate you and what you like. You touched on a lot of different things, and one of the important one, all of it was important. But one of the highlights for me was when you said it's definitely not isolated to just one thing, because instantly I thought about just being Black and me having culture shock moving to Kalamazoo. And I've seen literally like people, I had a high top fade, like Kid from Kid and Play. And I don't know how many times people were like, white people were like, well, let me touch your hair. And I was like, well, what is this? What do you mean? And, no, I don't touch my hair. And I didn't know that was a thing because it was like culture shock, but it took, like Stacy said, that communication for me being able to talk to somebody older to not only find out some people were not trying to be funny, it was just different to them. But in that different, it made me feel different, like cringy almost, like I'm ducking, like don't touch my hair. Definitely don't touch my hair and mess my hair up, but also don't make me feel like I'm a pet. And so there's a whole different, and that still goes on right now. So I really appreciate you lifting up that it's definitely just not about, oh, I saw two men on a commercial kissing. Sometimes it's like literally, I just saw a black man walking around the store shopping. And it's like, what did I just do wrong? And I still wonder, I still have to wonder sometimes, what am I doing? Or question myself to make sure I'm not doing anything. So you are totally correct when you say the conversation keeps going and it is not isolated to just one thing. Derek, I know I left you on the side for a minute. Sorry, brother. If you can chime in on when the world sends in that different messaging, how do you handle that?
One, great conversations and everything. Like, so yeah, it was all needed. I was just over here on the sidelines absorbing, But when it comes to the world and sending out these different messages, whether it be toxic masculinity or what have you, those conversations, it can be hard because I do have littles. I try my best to give them the foundation and everything for as far as navigating what to do. I try my best to give them at least a compass, of, okay, in this situation, I know that this isn't what my dad said, or just trying to find a way around it. But when the world is, saying what the world says, the world's always going to teach the very worst of a subject, and that seems to be what kids kind of grab onto. With my son, I try to bring him back to what we at first told him about a subject, or if it's something that we have not talked about with him, we try to sit down and just talk through it with him. It can be really, really hard to really break that stuff down and to have those conversations, because some conversations can be uncomfortable. It could be something that I wasn't prepared on, wasn't prepared for. Like, there have been conversations that I've had with my son where it's been like, I'm literally been looking up, how do I have this talk with my son? And I'm still studying. And then he just comes out of the blue with the question. And I mean, I make it known to him that I don't have all the answers. I'm not like this all-knowing being. So I try to work through the stuff with him if I don't have any info on it, but I try to just give him a foundation of how to navigate himself, because end of the day, I can't be there all day. I can't protect him from everything, and I don't know what he's going to latch on to, whether it be at school or him watching TV or whatever commercial come up. So I try to just stay engaged with him on that front.
I appreciate you saying that and sharing that too, as far as like, you're not the expert. I tell my kids all the time, I have no idea. But we can find out and figure it out. The knowledge that I share with them is what I've obtained through my years, and I try to apply as much of it as I've learned, but I know I have to go back and refresh a lot of times. I have to lean on wise counsel and things like that. And they see me do it. They have no problem with the fact that I have to say, let me ask somebody that may know a little better before I say the wrong thing. And I try to stay with that, because like exactly what you just said, Derek. It's the world will come with a lot, and you would have to be the guru, just sitting in the kitchen that's just floating, and anybody come in and ask you a question, you have that answer. And that's impossible. That's impossible. We have to work. We have to live our own lives, eat, sleep. And while we're doing these things, the kids are absorbing and absorbing and absorbing so much. Before going to this last question, I have to lift up, it says, how do you talk to your kids about society norms? And if I don't lift this one up, then I would be wrong. So we talked about videos, we talked about movies, books. There's one important book that has white supremacy written all over it and everything. And let me say that a little differently, because I don't want to condemn anybody that's a part of any faith or any religion. I am not condemning religion, faith, or anything like that. But what I can say is that religion has been used in ways that supersedes any music or any movie or anything like that. And this is something that parents have had to contend with as well. That says, I read in this religious book, because I won't just vilify. By no means do I mean to vilify any of the religious books. I actually read from 2 of them myself. But I also know that things have had white supremacy hands in it, through translation or through the way things have been interpreted. And then that's subjected onto society. So it's one thing to say, I want my son to survive, and so I have picked up certain ideologies from society that may be wrong. But when religion says it's okay for you to think this way, and by persecuting others, you can actually get a seat in the Holy Land, in heaven, and things like that. I've watched parents not talk to their children right now for choices that they make, and which is weird to me, because I just can't picture detaching myself from my children in any type of way. And y'all don't have to say anything about religion itself. But where I'm going with that is, when we talk about society norms, we can't turn a blind eye to some of our society norms have been perpetuated by some of the things that's in religion, so to speak. And you can be condemned. Just perfect example would be slavery at its height, or at its height, and also after, to explain the Bible itself. Certain passages have been used to justify slavery or the conditions of Black people. And I can go further with different examples. As a parent, my youngest one just graduated high school from Kalamazoo Central. So I don't have any little ones anymore. I have young adults that say some things from what they see at work or at school, different things like that. And one of them has been, well, if God said that this is wrong or this is wrong, then aren't these people? And it's like, whoa, you don't know nobody that speak for God. So let's just throw that out. And if somebody is repeating in the name of religion or God or something like that, surely they couldn't be condemning somebody else, but they do. As a parent, how do you contend with something as powerful as religion that does help shape what we call society norms? normal is just a setting on the dryer. I know that, and I think y'all know that. But society does say, Ed, you're left-handed, you're weird. Ed, you should not have so pretty on your neck because you're a man. Ed, why do you talk to the officers in a peaceful way when you know the history that officers have had? I hear it all. And then religion sometimes literally has been used to substantiate judgment of me. So there we go. I'm shutting up. I want to turn it over to you first, Derek, if you don't mind. It doesn't just have to be religion. It can be anything. Sports. Why aren't your son in sports more? Why isn't everybody says so many ridiculous things of what they think you should be doing with your children? I just really would like to know, how do you keep your household or your communication with your child combating something like that? And if it is religion or anything that's put on a pedestal, so to speak, in our society that has high regard, how does a parent trump something like that?
Yeah, for me, for society norms, I mean, it starts with the basics. I tell my son all the time, I tell my son that, one, you think differently than me, and that's okay. So when I think differently from this person over here, it's okay for us to think differently. So just building that foundation of accepting that not everyone's going to think the same thing. But when it comes down to, some societal norms or religion, like one, my son is neurodivergent. So he's on spectrum. And like, I have these talks with him all the time that you think differently than most. But the way that you think is beautiful because you see what I don't see. So when it comes down to like something like the religion and things like that, I do subscribe to Christianity. I'm Christian. And I know that there are a lot of people who have done a lot of things that will say that they're the same. And when it comes to my son, I always try to teach him or tell him like, when has something good ever come from hate? Nothing good can ever come from hating somebody. And with that, I'll just say, you be the best you that you can be. You present the best image of yourself that you can be. When somebody approaches you, you treat them with the most respect that you can. Because one day you might need this person. You don't know what bridges you could be burning. But I think it just comes down to that, having that respect for others and really being secure in yourself as well. I feel like there's a lot more that I want to say, but it's just jumbled in my head. So I might come back with more, but that's all I got for now.
No, I appreciate that. You actually just said, I think, one of the most important lessons that I learned about. I grew up in church. I don't subscribe to any religion anymore. I do believe in God, but what I learned that was important was that, so right now I think society makes God in their image. And once upon a time, I believe God made us in his or her image. I definitely don't care to know. I don't declare to just know who absolutely created me. But what I do know is parents are the closest form to what a child knows is God. This is the person that creates their universe for them, the person that protects them. And if we break it down on that just simple level, this is just my opinion. If I don't want to go too deep, so I'll leave it very surface by saying, if this is the only thing a child knows, anything interrupting that is outside, which doesn't mean, like Derek said, it doesn't mean that it's bad necessarily. It's just different. But there are things that not all religion, not all religions, but I've seen some basically tell a person, okay, you're great, but how you're living is wrong, and so you're going to hell. And it's like, wow. And I remember like believing certain things growing up, and I just had to undo certain things. But what Derek lifted up, I think, is very important, because if we look at people for people, the less we get into you're tall, you're short, you come from here, you come from there, I'm white, you're black, you're Latinx, you're Asian American, we got so many different things that makes us different. It's like, am I supposed to be around you? Am I supposed to know you because society norm says this? And I don't mean to blame it on religion. And I hope that I'm not. I hope that anybody's listening hears my heart by saying I'm not vilifying or trying to make a scapegoat out of religion. I have just seen that be the end all say all. Like, you're not on punishment, you're not in trouble, you're just going to hell later on one day. And that has caused people to suffer on the inside. And if society says that I'm 6 feet and I grew up in the inner city, I should have some type of hooping skills, which I do not. Is that okay? Like, is that okay? I can't hoop. So is that okay? I like to draw. Is that okay? And oftentimes that has not been okay. And I did not have the refuge to check in with to see, was it okay? And the biggest hierarchy that I had within my life was church has been refuge for a lot of people. And oftentimes, by not seeing the people, only seeing the passages or the scriptures, people have not been given that. Stacy, I just said a whole lot, but the question is, how do you parent back with the society with certain things have been regarded as this is the right way?
Yeah, this is an easy question and one that we could probably talk about for the next day and a half. Church is not a refuge for me. My faith is not one that I don't lean into the judgment. I'm in no way, shape, or form okay with explaining away harms done in the name of a religion or a church or God. There's been so much separation that has come in religion's name in our country, all over the world. And I just steer clear. And I know what I want to take in my faith, and I leave the rest. I lean into a lot of stuff and social justice, and that's just not one that I attend to. I will not make excuses in any religion's name that causes harm to somebody, period. And if that isn't in my family's circle, we're just gonna, to the left. We're just gonna go the other way. Because I think there are a lot of people that want to change and want to learn and are on a journey. And those are the people that I want to help lift up, and that I want those people to help lift me up, right, on my journey. And there are some that are very indoctrinated in their faith, and they're not going to move. And I don't have the time or the energy, so I just go the other way. But I will say that I do feel a lot of pressure sometimes to think about society norms and what that means for my kids. Sometimes I look at my kids and I'm like, oh, or I look at other people's kids and I'm like, oh, my kids aren't doing that, or my kids aren't wearing that, or my kids don't have that same like tough, rough and tumble like boy kind of like traditional boy mentality. And I'm like, maybe we should. And I'm like, no, no, I want these kids to be who they are. And so I just want to make sure that my kids are embracing, themselves and not feeling like they have to keep up with anybody or have those outside judgments. And I hope that they look at others the same way.
Both of y'all was real dope in how y'all answered. So that was a great example of thinking different and approaching different, but also not subscribing to condemning your children with the use or non-use of traditional religion or the things that society has said sometimes you cannot do or say this. I think that was dope, Stacey, that you was like, yeah, to the left, like just flat out, I'm not going into that. And it could be a lot. I've watched some people guilt themselves into, well, maybe I should do something because I've been living so wrong. And then they take their guilt and put it on to others, including their children. And now it's like no rap, no cartoons, no R&B. As a matter of fact, no secular music, period. And you can't do this, and this will keep you safe. And it's like, does it? And that's not condemning anybody's parenting style. I just found within my own parenting style, that's not my approach, because that doesn't give them a clear, objective view to be able to say, I want a tattoo. I want to express myself. And I knew all of my kids would want, because I have tattoos everywhere. So I already knew that I would get that back and even change. Again, my daughter being the lead, and she just beat both of the boys and that type of stuff. She's super expressive, and she thanks me a lot for giving her because I was very, what they would consider chauvinistic and misogynistic in my way of thinking in the world that actually my mother helped shape. You take the garbage out, your sister does the dishes. You clean the bathroom, your sister does the living room. And I carried on a lot of that. And then, of course, once again, not using religion in my own personal life, but talking with people and then them saying, oh yeah, well, the end all say all, which is this, says this. It's like, well, well, she said, and she's a person, a little person, but she's a person. She says she feels like this. And I can't, it's pretty much what Stacey was saying. Like, I can't think of anything in this world to justify hurting my kids or sending them into harm's way and then saying, well, I got that from here, and you just kind of have to deal with that. I have to be accountable for the hurt and harm because I'm not perfect. So I've definitely made them all cry unintentionally. In me thinking that I have to be the father, whatever that means. I'm learning. And this conversation within itself has been learning. I've learned even more just during this conversation. You all have no idea, honestly. I just learned a lot. We're approaching that time. We just hit that time. It's 5:30. I want to ask, do you have any last words before getting ready to close out?
But let's lift each other up as parents, no matter what, and try not to judge other parents I was great at doing that before I had kids, and actually having kids humbles you really quickly.
Absolutely.
I make mistakes, and I remind myself when I see other parents making mistakes. Like you said, Ed, we're not perfect. We are learning. Let's give ourselves grace, and let's lift each other up as parents.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Follow up what Stacy said. Absolutely give yourself some grace, because I mean, parenting, it's like flying an airplane while you're still putting it together. You know, it's just, we haven't crashed yet, so I hope we can keep going. One thing I would like to add, and you know, this is my view, but I believe that our kids, they come out, you know, being exactly who they're supposed to be. Like you never have. There's never a 5-year-old with an identity crisis. You know, it'll be us as adults that we have to find our way back to who we were. I think that as a parent and as a father, it is my job to see like the gifts, the talents that are inside my sons, to see what's present there. And then, okay, example, if my son, he loves mechanical things. He loves cars, trucks, anything with a gears and motor, loves it. So as a parent, I see it as my responsibility to put him in an environment where that is most likely to thrive. So anything that I see inside my son, I need to put him inside an environment or expose him to whatever's going to help that grow, just like a seed. And I let him become exactly whatever that seed is. I don't know if it's going to bear fruit. I don't know anything. I'm going to figure out how good I did in 20 years when the fruit is there. But I think that it's up to parents to recognize those things inside our kids and really try to give it the environment for them to become exactly who they are. Not me putting my impressions on them. Like, I fully accept that he is not going to agree with me on everything. This is a little version of me that can disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. That's how he becomes better than me. That's all I got.
I love what both of you all shared, because the connection of that is not only should we lift each other up as parents and allow that grace, but like what Derek said, our children come into this world exactly who they're going to be. We should nurture that and cultivate that. And guess what's so powerful, going back to what Stacy lifted up and why we should give that grace. We are the guardians for them for a reason. And that's why I never give my mother a hard time about certain things. Like I tell her, I don't agree with everything, but I get it that on my journey, that's exactly what I needed for my story, for my testimony. There are some things that I would have taken out of the story, but then I don't know how that would have ended up on the other end. So we are, just going back to what Stacy said and giving us that grace and lifting us up, we are in charge of the most precious gift that you can imagine. And we have to do right by that, because they are, as Derek lifted up, but they are who they are. There's no sense in trying to diminish it, hide it, shun it, none of that. Just lift it up. I'm actually happy. I can't quit smiling right now, because just taking the both of what y'all said and just putting it together is like, wow, I think about it like this all the time anyway. The blessing, because it is a blessing to me, is just the gift that just literally keeps giving. But I have a responsibility as well. I have a huge responsibility to help them navigate, to let them navigate their own, but to also help navigate as much as I possibly can. And that, I take pride in that. I really thank you. I thank you both for being here. We definitely have to have a part 2. So we're going to have to go deeper on like a couple different things. Emily and I touched on these things, but we also know that there's so much more that we have to talk about as parenting. And my hopes as far as next steps and something tangible that we can have in the community is creating that dialogue where people are having diverse dialogue sometimes, because that's some of the best learning. I can talk to 10 Black fathers for the rest of this year and I would learn a lot. But the minute I step out of that comfort zone to talk to parents in general, I probably would learn about so many different things that is overwhelming sometimes, because there's so many different learning styles and approaches to teaching. And y'all know that, and especially y'all got little ones, so y'all really are refreshed, very up to speed with what's going on, and how to interact. And I just appreciate you both taking the time, because you are parents, taking the time to talk about parenting when you actually could have been parenting. So thank you very much for being here and taking the time out to share your truth, and also the teaching moments. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. And thanks to your HT.
Thank you. Great conversation.
Right. Great. Peace, y'all.